Okay, good evening folks. So, the evening before the Challenger space shuttle disaster, the overnight temperature was forecast to be around 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is getting close to zero. And the scientists at NASA, some of the rocket scientists knew that they had problems with O-rings and in cold temperatures. So the fact that there were O-ring problems in cold temperatures has been known about for years. And so on the eve of the space shuttle launch of the Challenger disaster, these brave scientists went to management at NASA to try and present this information to say, hey, this is too dangerous, we should postpone the shuttle launch. Unfortunately, they didn't present the information in a way that was easily understood. And I'll show you in the next slide, and you'll understand why. And management didn't comprehend the magnitude of what's happening, and of course we all know what happened next, the tragic Challenger disaster. So this is the information that they presented. This is the chart that they came up with, and arranged here chronologically the shuttle launches, some information about the temperature of the weather at the time, and where there'd been O-ring damage. Did anybody glean any insights from that? Other than, must be, I don't know, all the rockets are the same. So, hindsight's a wonderful thing, of course. And in all the analysis and investigations afterwards, they managed to plot the data in a different way. And when you look at the data like this, you can see down here is a congregation of zero defects when the ambient temperature was 65 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But the colder it got, the higher the number of incidents they had with O-ring failure. And you can see here, this green line was the overnight forecast temperature for the night before Challenger disaster. So if you were presented with the information that way, would you want to go on a free ride on the Challenger? Probably not. So I know that's a bit of a grim topic, but I think it actually illustrates things really well in terms of how powerful data visualizations can be, in terms of looking at data in different ways. It's the same data, it's just presented in a different way that actually makes more sense. So with that introduction, what I wanted to talk about tonight is a little bit about CRM and Power BI. I'm going to go through, talk about the product itself. I'm going to do a couple of demos. For the second demo, I've got a little bit of a scenario that sort of takes us through doing some ad hoc analysis with Power BI. I'm going to talk a little bit about the on-premise scenarios. So Power BI is predominantly a cloud service. There's some things you can do locally on-premise, and there's also talk about how we can get some data to the cloud. I've got a little bit of information on licensing and pricing, and of course, there'll be a couple of losers at the end, a whole lot of links for people to download the slides so you can follow up some more. A little bit of background about myself. I'm a Dynamics CRM consultant. I'm by no means an expert in Power BI or data analytics. As a CRM person, a lot of my reporting involves, let's create some SSRS reports, let's configure some out-of-the-box dashboards, let's tell the users to just export to Excel and do their own analysis. Hands up if that sounds familiar to anyone else in the room. Yeah, cool. That's just the way we do it, okay? The last few months I've come across a lot of the Power BI product and was quite impressed, so I thought I'd use it for inspiration to sort of spread the community here. So I'm coming at it from an angle of someone who's a CRM person. I've learned a little bit about it, I've coupled some demos together, and I think it's quite impressive with what you can achieve, particularly with no code. One of the things I often find in our projects is we get a one-liner statement that says, the system will provide out-of-the-box reporting and allow for ad hoc reporting. And that's as much requirements as you get up front. So who's had a requirement like that? Yeah, right. Who's had a whole project like that? Some of that is because when you're building a system, you don't necessarily know what you need up front. And some of these things will change over time. So you do need systems to be flexible, but it's kind of hard to do those pre-cleaned SSRS reports and dashboards to cater for all those scenarios. But I think Power BI can really help. So what is Power BI? Primarily, it's a cloud-based service that has really rich visualizations and can be used to aggregate multiple different data sources together to do some really powerful analytics. You can do some cool dashboards, there's lots of interactive visualizations that are all interdependent, and I'll show you some demos that will make a lot more sense. So in addition to the cloud service, we have a Power BI desktop client, which you can use to run reports locally. You can also author dashboards and things locally with the Power BI desktop. There is a gateway product. It sounds like a gateway drug, really. And it's about getting your data from the on-premise up into Power BI in the cloud on a regular scheduled basis. I'll talk a little bit about that. But Power BI really has a lot of different connectors to existing cloud services, and when I show you some of those, I was amazed when I saw how many were there, because it's a really polished product. There's a lot of out-of-the-box connectors, common services. Yes, cool. Any questions at this point? Cool, moving right along then. Sorry, who's familiar with Power BI? Who's hands-on? Yeah, cool, a few people? Great. If there's anything you want to add, let me know.
Just you.
Oh, cool, all right. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, let's cut to a demo. I've had enough slides. Try to go to the cable here. I forgot to mention also, yes, I am 5'2", for those of you in the back of the room, I am standing up. Right, okay, so what I've just done is I've just flicked to a browser that's showing a Power BI dashboard that is connected to a Dynamics CRM online service. So this dashboard, I spun up a new CRM online service. I just installed the sample data for Service Manager. Oh, good call, Craig, sorry. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, you're all paying attention, thank you. Okay, let's recap. So, I spun up a CRM online instance, I've installed the sample data, I then created a new Power BI instance in the same Office 365 tenant. So essentially that you go to Office 365 admin, so you do a new trial, and then through a series of clicks, I pointed this to my CRM, and there's an out-of-the-box content pack that knows how to interpret a lot of the entities. It's pulled all this data in and given me some cool dashboards. So I'll show you a little bit around this dashboard, and then I'll show you how that's connected. So as you can scroll down here, we've got mixtures of things, everything from these bar charts to interactive maps. When I click onto it, it takes me down further into the dashboard. I can refine things. And as you see, as I refine things, multiple other parts of the dashboard are actually changing. You'll probably tell my musical influences if you've seen some of the names that are made up of it. So this is all well and good. I'm going to flip this out from the side here. The concepts within Power BI are a dashboard, reports, which are the things you author, and then the data sets, obviously, which is where your data's come from. So the thing that we're interacting with here is the dashboard. But when we click on this information, it takes us actually down deeper into a report. You can see the select on the side here has changed. Now this is cool, and this is nice. It's kind of a different visualization to what you see in Dynamics CRM. But, you know, I don't think it's necessarily blowing our socks off at this point. It's pretty similar to some of the information you might have already got in CRM. But one of the aspects of this is people can come in to use Power BI without actually going into Dynamics CRM. So for your executive dashboards, that's all cool. You can come and have a look at them in here. What I want to do now is actually show you how I connected this up. So if I hover over this, you'll see if I can remember Zoom. Dynamics CRM Online Service Manager. So Power BI has the concepts of a content pack. And I'm going to go and actually pull in a new data set. When I click Get Data, it gives me this nice little screen. I can pull things from my organisation, so that's for people who publish all the stuff within the Power BI tenant. I'm going to connect to services. So services is going to give me a list of online services that I can connect to. So the Power BI tenant published all these different types of connectors that know how to connect to these different products and pull in the data. So you can already see we're just in the A's, and we've already got quite a few connectors we can connect to. Cool, we can pull in Bing for our analytics around websites. But if you're more of a Google person, you can connect to Google Analytics and put your Google Analytics information in here, so you can cross-reference this with other things. You can pull in information out of GitHub. But of course, we're a Dynamics CRM community here, so let's go down to Microsoft Dynamics. So you can see we've got some AX content packs. When it comes to CRM, we've got these two content packs. The one down here that I'm hovering over is the Service Manager. That's the one I was showing before. I'm now going to connect to the Sales Manager so I can show you how easy that process is. So I'm just going to, let's copy the link to the CRM. Who wants to watch somebody type? I'm going to enter 6, that's the end of my financial year. I'm going to connect through now, it's going to prompt me for authentication. I'm already logged in, so fingers crossed this session's still active. Yep. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm not going to connect to my CRM online. It's anonymous, we know that's not going to work. I'm just going to say OAuth. You can see here, when connected to different sources though, you've got anonymous, Windows, basic, or key, so you can be connected to a service via an API key, or OAuth. We'll sign in. And, okay. Just watching videos up is fun. There we go. So that's the extent of my coding tonight so far. I want you to count the lines of code that I do in all these demos as well, actually. Let's see how much we get to it again. All right. So what these content packs bring to us is not just pulling in the data, but they give us some pre-canned reports and pre-canned dashboards. With the sales and service content packs, obviously they're going to give you a great head start on getting up and running for using those modules of CRM. Now, a lot of people here in the room are probably not using sales. Maybe they're using a little bit of service. There's probably a lot of XRM that happens here. Your head's nodding in the room. You can create your own content pack that you can then publish within your organisation. So here's how to connect to our custom entities so that your analysts within your organisation will build out our own content pack. Okay, so that's successfully imported. You've got my little thing up here going importing data. So you can see here down on my left-hand pane, I've now got the Dynamics CRM Online service and Dynamics CRM on sales. So if I go in there's not actually any information. That does take a few minutes to bring that data in. So when that's working, what happens is the data comes through and it gets refreshed once a day. So that's why I had the pre-canned service one there, but I just wanted to show you how easy that was to connect to your CRM Online tenant. So I guess if you've seen an easier way to connect to CRM and pull all the pre-canned information out, I'll let you know, but I think that's pretty special. The other thing I thought was great about that was clearly all the other content packs you had available there. So there was Facebook and Google Analytics and stuff like that. So it's just a CRM. Okay, so that's sort of your out of the box dealing with CRM Online. Let's go through a scenario where we're going to do some more ad hoc analysis and actually pull in data from different sources. So I'll flick back to my slide. I won't focus on anything because that'll mess me up. Now I'm going to go through a scenario, right? So we're working on a team, basically a help desk for the LOBSI, Global Line of Business System Enterprise Edition. This system went live in January, and we've been tracking support requests in Dynamics CRM. For my demo, it's online, we can easily on-premise. We've also got some other data in an Excel spreadsheet, a CSV file, and a web page. I'm going to show you how we connect that up. So what's happened is over the 6-7 months that this has been running, we've got a lot of support requests and we've resolved them. But we want to do a little bit of reporting and ad hoc analysis and understand who's causing us the most pain and potentially why. Like, so why we, we'll get into the scenario so hopefully we can clear up. So now rather than go to the web, what I'm going to do is go to Power BI Desktop. So Power BI Desktop is clearly a client that's running on your machine. Here I am loading up an existing PBIX file. So PBIX is like the file we do with Power BI. I've already configured a few data sources. We're going to have time to go through all this. But you can see now when I click on these data sources here and interrogate this information, again, all the visualizations are linked. So I can actually get some pretty groovy ways of interrogating this information and trying to understand what's going on. So in my scenario, we've got a lot, well, it looks like a lot of these are coming from Shell Harbour, right? So a beautiful place on the coast, a place to live, it's quite nice, you should get there, I recommend it. However, that'd be causing us a lot of grief. You can see we get nice little tooltips as we go across and look at all this stuff. Across the bottom here, we've got different tabs, different sheets, and this is all within what we call a report. So before in the web, we're looking at a dashboard and we have reports we have data. Okay, so you can see that these are interconnected, which is pretty cool. Just makes things a little bit more pop out, right? So across our support calls, we had a few hardware problems, a mix of network problems, definitely a bit of PEVCAC. You can see by far the biggest problem we've got is training related. So we had to solve this by either training them or it was come about because they didn't actually attend training or they didn't quite comprehend the training that was given to them. So why is that? So let's go and have a look at some of the other tabs that we've got. So again here we've got charts by location. So we can see that Newcastle's got quite a lot, they've got 400. This is actually the number of people. So if we look at Newcastle with 400 people, Newcastle's got quite a low number of support tickets. Shell Harbour, with only 80 odd people, they've got the most support tickets. So what's going on there? So if we clear that out, another way of representing that data is this scatter chart below. You can see here the axis across to the right means the number of people, and across the top is the number of tickets. So if I click on or hover over this one, I can see that Shell Harbour with 200 and only 86 people is clearly causing us a whole bunch of groups. And why is that? So this is another way of visualising this and actually sort of getting to the bottom of why that is. So to create one of these, it's actually quite easy. All you do is just say new visual, pop out the data from the right here, and you drag and drop it into there. At the same time, for an existing one, if you want to just flip through and have a look at different ways of looking at that data, so remember it's space shuttle versus the curve graph, you've got quite an easy way to go, well, I've plotted my data, it doesn't make any sense. There's a table, there's a pie, there's a scatter chart again. So we've got to configure it depending on what you put the data in the right spot. So this is how you work with it in Power BI Desktop, which is interesting because you can get reports and information locally, haven't necessarily published anything there. So you can connect to your on-premise data. Here at the moment, what I've connected to, if I go and have a look at the data that I've got, across here is my list of my data. So I've got a combination of things. I've got data that has come from an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got data that's come from, I haven't brought in a CSV file yet, I'll show you how that's done. I've connected to my CRM. And what I did was I pointed that to the OData URL. Power BI knows how to deal with OData, pulls the data in this way. You can see here I've got something called _MCS underscore, so it brings in the native CRM entity name, and what you can do to make that more friendly is call that resolution reasons. So now I'm manipulating my model, just cleaning it up a little bit. That's going to help me do some further analysis. So, great, I've got information. What about the relationships between the information? So here it's showing me this information. Now, Power BI is pretty smart when it can find matching columns and link them up. So I'm going to demonstrate that now. I'm going to pull in some more data. So I'll just zoom out a little bit. That's not very readable. You can see here we've got staff by location. This is support tickets, so this has come from CRM. This has come from my Excel spreadsheet. I'm now going to get data. I'm going to check and go to recent sources. I've got a training provider rating CSV file. Let's actually look at that first. Definitely a CSV file. It's got a list of training provider names and then locations and then some numbers. So let's pull that in. Power BI goes, cool, I think it's separated by a comma. Is this what it looks like? You want to pull that in? Yeah, cool. Haven't written any code yet. That's pulled that down there on the right and automatically linked it up to location. I didn't have to provide any hints, it worked that out. Now, say for some reason that there was no connection or you wanted to explicitly connect things that weren't joined up, you can easily do that through dragging and dropping. So I'm going to find full name, just give me somewhere. You can see it hasn't sort of written a full name. My full name should be connected to it, so I can just drag and connection there. That's how I create relationships. Okay, so now I've got a mixture of CRM data, I've got an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got a CSV. In my scenario, the CSV file contained the ratings, so the evals, the evaluations of people who went on the training course, and the number of evaluations. So my Microsoft colleagues are smiling because the evaluations are very funny to do. Hasn't really given us any insights yet. So what I want to also now pull in is I've also got a web page. So the procurement team has helpfully published something on the web that says, here's the training providers and here's how much we spent for each of them. So this is just a simple web page, view source. It's just nicely in a table, that's rather convenient. Having said that, so there's my information there. I want to pull that information in because I want to look at training providers for Shell Harbour. How were they rated? And then how much did we spend on them? So let's pull in some information. So I'm going to go to my recent sources. You can see there my recent source has that same URL. It's interpreted that there's a document, but it also says WOBC training procurement spend, a little table that I've got in there. Let's go with that. I Okay, cool. That's the same information we just saw in the web browser. There's the dollar amounts. Cool. So that's brought that data in, and it's also connected to the location. That's pretty helpful. So now if I go back to my report, the other thing I can do is obviously look at the data in a spatial manner. All I've got is a list of locations, which happens to be city. I haven't geocoded this. I haven't gone off and done some GNAF thing where I put in GNAF and then done the latitude, longitude, and worked that out. Bing Maps is interpreting the city name. The one thing I did do, if I go to support tickets, I just had city. And what I found was there's a city called Orange and a city called Young, also in America. So when I first did this, it showed America and it showed New South Wales. That wasn't what I wanted. So what I ended up doing, this is probably the closest that I got to coding for this solution, was that I created a new column called country, and I hard-coded it to Australia. So when I look at this data, there's another column called Australia. Remembering that this is what I've added to my CRM, so CRM doesn't have this information. And then I created another column called location, which is a concatenation of those two. So that's as close as coding as we got. I just basically then point this map component, this map visualization, give it the city field as the legend, and the location field as the actual location. Bing Maps is doing the geocoding for me, it's got it there. That's really cool because of course it lets me narrow down different areas. I can zoom in, look at the data. The circle size is kind of giving me a representation. I've got, looking at just hardware problems here. Okay, so now taking away the hardware problem filter, we can actually see that there's a whole lot of stuff going on here. Ooh, where's that Shell Harbour? I don't necessarily like this one, so maybe I'll flip to a different visualization, spatial. This is bringing in the visualization that's actually published in the gallery. So, this country's not available. But as you can see, now we've got a 3D glided way of interacting with stuff. So it's just another way of actually, different way that might get your boss's attention, or it might reveal some insight to you into, okay, what's going on here. I'm going to do a bit of a segue and talk about that though. So these visualizations that you see here in the panel on the right, going to go there. The visualizations, you can import visualizations, and these visualizations are actually all published to a gallery and actually open source, and you can modify them if they needs. So there's a Power BI visualization gallery, so if what's there doesn't meet your needs, you can go and import some from here, and you can see there's a whole gallery of these. Some are still a little bit later, but there's a whole lot of different ways of looking at things. This one's called a waffle chart, not quite what I thought it would be, just can't hit it. This Network Navigator looks pretty damn interesting to me. I haven't got time to connect that up to relationships in CRM. That would be a pretty powerful way. Imagine you smash that in data or something like that.
These are on-premise as well.
Yeah, so you can pull these down and these become part of that PBIX file when you publish it. There's a whole lot of other controls you have over the visualization. You can change colors, do heat maps, things like that. There's a Gantt chart if you're displaying essentially time-related data. Lots of things in there, so that's worth keeping an eye on. Cool. One of the craziest ones that I've seen, I'll just do a demo of that and then we'll get back to our training providers. So, we pulled in data from CRM, we pulled in data from Excel, we pulled it in from a CSV file, and we pulled it in from a web page and it's all connected. But I still want to just have some kind of list of values in here. I can't be bothered making a CSV file. I can just enter data. So what I'm going to do is enter some information in here. So let's go to Wollongong, we'll give it a value of 12. Shell Harbour, I'm going to give it a value of -6, and you'll see why in a second. Let's go Nowra, 3. I feel like the world's worst option here. What else do we have? Orange, 12, and then 12. Cool. Okay, so we'll load that. So we've actually now just created a little bit of additional data inside our Power BI analysis. What I want to do here is connect this up to the fish visualization. So this is one of the ones that I pulled in from the gallery. And let's see what happens. So this is a creative way of some of the creative things you can do with these visualizations. So the size of the fish is dictated by those values that I put in. And see this poor little guy here? Poor old -6 shell harbour. What's going to happen to him is he's going to float up. So that's kind of limited clearly by your creativity, but also clearly by development talent. So I've not written anything. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here and using some of the gallery published components. Okay, this is all good. This is in Power BI desktop. At the moment, I'm the only one who can look at this. Hey boss, come over to my computer and look at my fish. I can see we've got a problem with the O-ring in this fish. I want to distribute this out. So there's a button up here where you essentially publish. That publishes it up to Power BI. So then clearly you can then share it with your teammates and your executives who don't have this client installed. So that's another way of obviously getting the information out there. You can lock these down, there can be permissions and things like that. So that's quite interesting. Great. I'm in my CRM on a daily basis. How do we use some of that Power BI stuff in CRM? Because I don't want my users to go off to Power BI all the time. So with the latest CRM online, so 2016 update 1, I'm going to go to sales, dashboards. There's a couple of ways to tackle this. So prior to this, there is a thing called Power BI embedded. And you can actually host through iframe Power BI segments in your own custom app, or you could do a web resource here in CRM if you wanted. But with CRM Online 2016 Update 1, when I go to create a new dashboard, any of you who've created a dashboard might notice this new guy up here called Power BI Tile. So I don't have to stuff around with the web resource anymore, so I'm not writing any code. This is connected to my Power BI instance. I'm going to go to my Canberra CRM user group. And then I'm going to pull in one of these segments. So I can count a ticket. So I should probably name these things better. Anyway. So there you go. So then I can put that in there. And this is published in the report element. But as you can see, I've got multiple dashboards. So we might actually have some of that sales information by now. Ooh, not doing good in the sales. I'll stick to being a consultant, I think. Let's go sales pipeline. There we go, that's something. So now I'm mixing data from the two different dashboards in Power BI. Remembering that Power BI is that hub of data that's come from multiple things. So you can even surface things from ERP or some other kind of system here in CRM. So I find that's kind of an interesting way of closing the loop.
So Craig,
yes?
you mentioned that it only refreshes the data once a day.
Yes.
So whereas dashboards usually mine.
There is another thing called real time, which will actually then go and execute it in real time. That does require a license. So you can connect to either your on-premise source or on-premise source. But yeah, you can go and force a refresh as well.
Yep.
And you can schedule it to be more frequently. Free, I think it's once a day, but if you've got a Power BI Pro license, you can do it more regularly. They do talk about the Power BI Pro, you actually streaming data, so you can just have it sitting there and go and I will confess that I don't understand how all that magic works, but there's options there. It's not just once a day. All right, cool. I'll start to wrap it up because I'm running out of time and conscious of all your time coming out here to Martin on Tuesday nights. One last thing I wanted to show off, as if I did any of this, I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants. We have, on the dashboards, we have this thing up here where you can ask a question of your data. So you can get some, using natural language queries, get some insights. So which one? Oh, thanks. So what we're going to do is support ticket. Oh, absolutely shouted. Sorry. Count that knows that I wanted information straight away. I'm shouting. Support ticket count date by reporter. So that's just interpreting clearly what I'm saying with an auto suggest of what I might further want to refine this by. It's giving me results down there on the right. Now, I think that's pretty powerful. I don't confess to understand how all that magic works, but clearly with non-technical people can sit there and try and divine some of these answers of what they actually want. You don't have to write a code for this. Keep out the stuff. Okay. So done. So let's do another one. So that's an answer where it's going, cool, I think the answer is just a number, I don't need to explain it in the chart. That's pretty magical. So I don't know, if I had got asked how long would it take you to build something like this custom, I'd say, yeah, like how much do you have? Because that's going to be crazy. So for me, this is all about reusing what's there. Okay, that'll be enough for now. Let's go back and finish this off with some dead by slides. So we've done that. What about on-premise? Okay, so there's a thing called the Power BI Gateway. This is a component that you can install in your on-premise world. It connects to Azure Service Bus securely, so you don't need to open any inbound ports because this makes a connection out to Azure Service Bus. And you will connect it through to both Power BI, but also in the future things like Power Apps, Microsoft Flow. Sorry, that's because it connects to the Gateway Cloud Service. So this is something you can install both on personal and enterprise. So you can install it just right on your laptop as a person. They talk about this when you go to the website. So you can just do it as yourself because you're just wanting to get some information, or you can do it properly and install it on a server and run it as a limited service, and this is facilitating your data. Now this works both for the scheduled data going up and down, but it also works for the real-time stuff. So when I talked about real-time, some of these Power BI sources published on powerbi.com can then make a real-time connection through to your analysis services queue that is on-premise. That's pretty interesting. So there's ways of bridging your on-premise to the cloud without having to put all your data to the cloud. Hang on, let's go back to proper slide mode. So we are wrapping up. So pricing, just also realised the English is on. You guys can read better than I can talk about that. That's all right. There is a free version, so you can go and try this today, in addition to being able to do a trial every 30 days that covers this. You can use the free version on a regular basis. There are limits to some of the streaming data you can see there. You get a gig of storage. So I think all that stuff that I put in, I think it's probably 5 meg or something like that. So a gig, depending on what you're analysing, get you a fair way. So the cool thing is you can obviously go and try that, put some Excel spreadsheets and disparate sources in there and see what kind of things you can come up with. Find out how easy it is, because really, apart from those 2 columns where I put Australia and then I concatenated city in Australia, so we're going to wrap it up with this, and then we'll throw it at Pete, and then we might do questions at the end for all of us. So I can take questions, but we'll let Pete see what I think, and then talk about that. Now, this is the warning. I've made this all look really cool and visualizations of the answer, but you've just got to remember a couple of things. I've got first-year university professor in my ears from 20 years ago, reminding me of a couple of things. This is a cool tweet I only saw yesterday, and I thought, yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? So it's a little bit like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So make sure that your visualizations are good. That's clearly a custom way to do it. The other thing is correlation doesn't equal causation. This is just a reminder. A couple of graphs that I found last night which amused me. So this is the number of people who drown by falling into a pool, which actually correlates with the number of films Nicolas Cage has appeared in. I think that's a good public safety lesson for all of us. The next one is per capita cheese consumption, which correlates with the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bed sheets. Don't know if there was an intersection of those two. And the last one before I free you up is letters in the winning word of Scripps National Spelling Bee correlates with the number of people killed by venomous spiders. So I guess my takeaway is Power BI is awesome. Go and check it out. I've got a bunch of links here. So if you download the slides will be put up tonight. I'm going to email it tonight, like I promised. They'll be put up on the meetup site. There's some links in here. Go to powerbi.com. The team has spent a lot of time putting great tutorials together. There's video content, there's blog content. Get on board, it's really easy. Have a trial, play with it, see what you come up with. The visual gallery there, we can download different visuals. The one that they often show is actually an aeroplane engine, like a jet engine, so people have drawn the visual components of the jet engine and then mapping to the number of flights, so they can kind of say, oh, this thing flies all the time, and it's into that. Interesting. There's also a dev center if you want to get into the visual, creating your own visualizations. And just like ideas we have for Dynamics, we've also got an ideas .powerbi.com. So you can go and see what other people are requesting, and if you've got something you want to do,